Hello everyone, welcome back. First of all, let me start out by saying sorry for the audio quality in the last video. I didn't realize at the time that I was recording with a mic that I had on my desk instead of the one on my headset, which is the one I'm using right now. So the audio should be a little bit better on this one. So, like I said in the last one, we're going to take out the 838. I've actually got it sitting over on the main line. You can probably hear it running in the background. One thing I wanted to point out, I found out what this was. I thought about it after the fact when I got done filming the other video. This is the feed water heater, I should say. It takes exhaust heat from the smoke box and preheats the water, and then it runs it through the feed water pump. So the flow comes through the cold water pump, which is right here, goes up into the feed water heater, and then it goes into the feed water pump, which is mounted right here on the side of the boiler, and injects water into it. So that's about the only real thing that I can think of from the other video that needed some clarification. So we're just going to leave the 844 over here for right now. We're going to come look at the 838. Turn the brakes off so we can hear. And what we've got is the 838, which, as I mentioned in the previous video, this is the engine that's in the UP shops in Cheyenne that's used for spare parts for the 844. If I remember correctly, they've pulled the rods off of it. It still has the elephant ears, but I'm pulling them off just for the sake of. I don't particularly care for them. To me, they look too British. That's just my opinion. I've also taken the Mars light off, and I think that's it. I don't have the commemorative badge on the front of it like the 844 has on it over there. We've got 16 cars with us today. Pretty heavy load. I don't know the tonnage. It's heavy. I can tell you that much. It's pretty heavy. We've got no diesel helper, so we're going to be taking it up all by our lonesome. And with that being said, let's hop into the cab and take a look around. So let me start out by saying that this is probably the most beautifully done cab that I've ever seen in a train simulator game. I mean, it's just very highly detailed. One thing that's missing from this one is the 844 badge, which actually, let's go out there and look at it. You should be able to see it from this one. I forgot to show it earlier. If I come in here, hello, there you go. That's the 844 badge on the footplate. You only get it if you have the 844 engine. Since we're using the 838, we don't have it on there. So, so let's go ahead and open these windows up. Just kind of slide these to the side. You notice that we've got a little windshield right here, and if we just click on that, it'll go away. We've got some storm windows right here. These all open. We've also got a vent down here on the side. And if I go to the external view and pop over here, you notice that this is open, so is the window. We have a roof hatch that can also be open. Go ahead and do that now. Same thing over on the engineer's side. We can move that window. We can hit the windshield. The doors back here also open. Now there is a bug with these doors, and I'm going to test my theory to see if I'm correct. If I open this door right here, come on, there we go. If I open this door, go to the external view, and then go back, that door closes. So it's a bug that I've noticed kind of off and on, and I finally figured out what was causing it. And if I do that again, it stays closed. It only does it one time, and then it won't do it again. Let's start describing some of these controls here. This big gauge right here that's climbing up on me and about to make a bunch of noise is the steam pressure gauge. You notice that it's climbing up towards 300. You should hear the safety start feathering here in just a second. And I can just barely start hearing a wisp of steam. There it goes. So yeah, that's the safety. And like I said, this is main pressure gauge. 300 psi is our working pressure. This little highlighted area right in here, 250, you don't want to get below that mark. Typically you want to keep your pressure within 10 pounds just for safety reasons. This device right here is our signal indicator. It has it for 2 different districts. This is standard Union Pacific and this is C&W. The control valve right here controls steam flow for this entire manifold. So let's go ahead and open that. Coming down the manifold, the first one we have here is the feed water pump. Now we can open this and it won't do anything. This is the gauge that indicates what it's currently doing. It won't do anything right now because we've got the feed water heater shut off. So let's go ahead and turn that on. And now try and do this to get the safety to seat. There we go. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is the feed water heater gauge. The numbers on here indicate 100 pounds worth of pressure. So the 10 is 100, 20 is 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. In order to inject water into the boiler, you have to be injecting it at a higher pressure than what your boiler is currently operating at. So right now we're at just under 300 psi. So in order to put any water into the boiler at all, we have to get it over 300 psi. The gauge beside it is the atomizer gauge, and what this is inside of the Firebox here there is a nozzle, and that nozzle has got 2 holes in it, or 2 slits. Some of them are different arrangements. I'm not 100% sure what the arrangement of this one looks like, but usually they're pretty much the same. You have one opening for oil and you have another opening for steam. And what you do is this valve here controls the oil flow going through it. So you would open this valve and oil would start to gravity feed into the boiler through into the Firebox through the burner. Beneath where the oil comes in, you have an opening for the atomizer. What the atomizer does is it sprays steam out into a mist, and if you think about a spray bottle and how you pull the trigger and it sprays out into a mist, that's called atomization. So you take a large lump of oil or a large pool of oil and then it gets sprayed out into this mist, kind of the way that an injector works on a car. And in the presence of fire, that oil will ignite and it will continue to burn as long as you have fuel and air and heat present. So it kind of works like a diesel in that you don't need a spark after the initial chain reaction happens and everything gets good and hot. It'll instantly start flashing as soon as it comes into the boiler or into the Firebox. So yeah, that's pretty much how these work on a kind of an easy explanation of it. So these work in tandem. If there's some tricks that you can do on real steamers to kind of get more out of it with less. Typically, if you open the oil, you would open your atomizer up before you open your oil valve, and the reason for that is it keeps oil from pooling into the bottom of the bottom of the Firebox, which can make a mess. If you're dumping oil out from underneath the engine, you can catch the ballast, or not the ballast, but you can catch the ties on fire. So the rule of thumb is you would come up on the atomizer first, and then you would open your oil valve second. Now there's instances where you can actually drop the atomizer pressure down without changing this. What that does is you don't spray the fire back quite as far. You give it a little bit more room to burn. It actually causes the fire to kind of slow down a little bit, and you can get a little bit more heat out of it that way. Basically, the atomizer is there to keep all of the oil in a mist, and you can cut back on it a little bit and get you just a little bit of a pool in the back. You have to be careful with it though, because like I said, if you cut back too much, then you're just dumping oil into the firebox, and that stuff can drip down onto the track, and oil tends to burn for a long time, especially when it's on top of a creosoted tie. So yeah, and we'll go over that once we get on the road here. And the control for the atomizer is this valve right here. We're going to run somewhere between 150 and 170. Actually, we'll be running between 100 and 170 on that. These two valves beside them, these are the blowout valves. On an oil burner, you have a stay. The automatic fireman is trying to bring the fire back because it must have. No, I don't want you to do that. Stop it. Yeah, the automatic fireman is thinking that I'm making a mistake, and I'm doing exactly what I want to do, and it keeps on trying to open the oil valve on me, and I'm trying to close it. Anyway, what happens is sometimes you get sludge in the oil line. It could be dirt, could be just some junk that's gotten into the lines, and it stops them up, and sometimes it can make it all the way to the burner, and it can cause the fire to go out. So what you would do is you would open this valve all the way up, and you would take this valve and you would open it, and what it does is it sends steam through the oil line into the burner, and it blows out the burner. Sometimes they won't get stopped at the burner, they'll get stopped at the tank, and if they do, then you open this one. It does the same thing, only it sends steam backwards into the tank. I want this thing to cool off, and he's trying to keep opening it up. This valve is the blower. What this does is when you're standing still, this creates an artificial draft. When a steam engine's in motion, the exhaust from the cylinders goes up the smokestack, creates a vacuum in the smoke box, and pulls air through the firebox, down in through the tubes, and then up through the stack. And the fire must have went out. Yes. Okay, that's fine. You can open that. It's not going to do you any good. Anyway, so yeah, when you're standing still, you would open this a little bit. The general rule of thumb on a regular engine is you would close this until smoke starts rolling back into the cab, and then you would open this until the air starts moving forward again. And that's it. You would run no more blower than you needed. And I see guys all the time that'll run them wide open like that. And even though this isn't a real engine, on an actual steam engine, if you did that, you're asking for trouble, because you're just sucking cold air into the firebox and you're shocking the boiler, and you can cause bad things to happen. So generally, even when we're rolling down the road, just open barely is all I would do. The valve right here behind it, or beside it I should say, is the tank heat. If I get over here on the engineer's seat, there is a gauge right here on the tender. This is the oil temperature gauge. You notice right now it's saying 0, which I think is a little bit colder than it is outside. So you would open this, and what it does, you see it's starting to climb there. This pipe right there, these pipes right here, this is a radiator that goes down through the oil tank, and it preheats the oil. So if you preheat the oil going into the firebox, you don't have to take as much heat out of the firebox to warm it up so that it will burn. And warm oil will burn more readily than cold oil. and like I said, you don't use as much energy. You get the heat more instantaneously than if you had cold oil going into it, and then you waste your heat. That's one of the reasons why oil burners respond quicker than coal burners, because the heat's almost instant. In a coal burner, you have to wait for the coal that's coming in to actually get hot enough to start burning. So there's a little bit of delay. On a hand-fired engine, it can take anywhere 30 seconds to a minute, depending on how hard you're working. On a stoker-fired engine, you notice it pretty quickly, mainly because in a stoker-fired engine, the lumps of coal are smaller. Hand-fired engine, they have to be bigger, so that way you don't kill your fireman sitting there shoveling the whole day. Let's see, I think that's everything over here. Two things I want to point out. The first is, this is the floor damper. There's a hole in the bottom of the firebox. That's the primary air that comes in. There's a second damper right here, and if I open up the peephole, you might be able to see it. See that plate right there? It's a plate that goes across here and cuts off the airflow. And there's a scoop under the bottom of the firebox. As the engine's in motion, you get air coming through here. It goes up through this hood, and then it goes across the top of the fire. Coal burners typically fire from the bottom. Wood burners fire from the top. And oil burners take it from both ends. I can't think of another way to say it, but that's the truth. Oil burners have to get as much air as they can if you want to maintain a stoichiometric ratio, which is like 14.7 to 1 air to fuel. And it takes a lot of air to run one of these. That's why they have so many air openings. Like I said, a coal burner would only have the grate area, and it would pull air through the coal itself. So that's pretty much it. This is the weep hole, or the peep hole, I should say. It's labeled as the sanding hole. What you would do is, oil burners produce soot, which coal burners do as well, but oil burners, the oil soot is a little bit, it creates a film on top of just flat out carbon. It gets inside the tubes and it coats them, and you don't get a good heat transfer between your heating surface on the inside of the tube and the evaporating surface, which is on the outside of it. So what you would do is you would load the locomotive up either by dragging the brake, or when it's working up a hill, you would take a scoop full of sand, you would hold it right here at the door, and there's enough draft going through the engine that it would pull the sand through, it would scour through the tubes, and it would pull a lot of the soot with it. You can't get it 100% clean, but you can get most of it. On coal burners, they have the same problem, except when an engine's working really hard, they're actually pulling some of the cinders and some of the ash up with the air that's coming through the fire, and that usually is enough to keep the flues or the tubes clean, so that way they don't have to sit there and sand them. But one of the things that they have to be very careful of is the soot and everything, or the cinders and everything is very abrasive, and they can get cinder cutting on their stay bolts, which is a pretty big problem on coal burners. We don't have to deal with that on oil burners. About the only thing that we have to deal with is overfiring, because it's very easy to do. One thing that's important on an oil burner is that you, and this is a problem that I have with the game. What happens is, and I've watched the automatic firemen do this, is they'll go wide open and then they'll come all the way off. And if you do that on an actual oil burner, you're going to break stay bolts. And the best thing to do is to kind of find where the engine wants to run and then just leave the valve alone, instead of just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Because unlike a coal burner or a solid fuel engine, you don't have a fire mass in here. when you start backing off on this valve, you're cutting off your fuel. That's all it is to it. It's not like now it's a little bit different in the game because of the way it has to be modeled. That's one of the difficulties that Mike had with modeling the, or at least I think that's one of the difficulties he had with modeling oil firing, is that the game is used to coal or some type of solid fuel. So what you would do is you would build up a mass inside the firebox, and that determined how well the engine was going to perform. With this, it's the opposite. You're not putting mass into it. You're burning it as you put it in. The firebox never fills up with anything other than fire. It's not like you're putting down a layer of oil and letting it burn. It's burning off of the nozzle. So as fast as you're putting it in, it's taking it out. So in a sense, if I'm making any sense at all to anybody, you're not pooling oil up. It's getting sprayed out into a mist, and that mist is on fire, and that mist is being sucked out. So if you close this valve off, on a real engine, you have no fire in it at all. The fire would go out. It would look just like that right there. Except you'd see glowing red brick. And if you've got it wide open like that, you know, it would probably be coming out to the cab. But and I'll do that whenever we get out there on the road. I never bring that back to closed, because if you do, the fire goes out completely on a real engine. Anyway, enough of my soapboxing. Here we've got some water glasses. Now the FRA mandates that you have at least two different ways of checking, or you have at least two ways of checking water in a boiler. This particular engine has got 4. So we've got a water glass here, and you have a spindle that goes in through the water side, and then you have a spindle, which you can't see it, it's up here on the top. And this is what got the Gettysburg engine in trouble, was scale got into this one and blocked off the passage so water couldn't come through. So any water that was sloshing around accumulated in the glass and wouldn't drain back into the boiler, and it told them that the water level was high when it wasn't. The water level was, they were basically out. Now to clean these, periodically a fireman would reach over, grab a hold of the blowdown here, and blow down the glass, and then close it, and then wait for the water level to come back. When I'm firing an engine, what I would do is I would reach over every now and then and just kind of do that. Just bob it a little bit, just to make sure that it's working. And that's pretty much it. And you have to do it periodically. The way he's got it modeled in the game, that these will actually stop up. One thing to look for is that when you're in motion, the water level will fluctuate just a bit, and you would see a lower frequency in the fluctuation. That's a good indication that you're starting to get stopped up. So the fireman's got one of them, the engineer's got one just like it. So there's your two ways. This one's got a little bit of redundancy. It's got these gauges, which are called tricocks, or water gauges, or watercocks, or I can't think of another name for them right now, but you would use these to check the water level. Back in the old days, this was all the engines had, and you had to check them every now and then, because if you didn't, you could run out of water, and we've already established that running out of water is a bad thing. So yeah, so let's open the top one here, and I hear water, so we're good. Same thing all the way down. In reality, if you open this, you would get a stream of very, very hot water that would flash the steam as it comes out, but it would be a wetter steam, unless it was uncovered. If the water level was down to, say, right here, it would be just steam coming out. If you got steam out of all of these, it's about to be a bad day. So yeah, this is a water column, by the way, And what that is a pipe that goes down into the boiler. It's kind of like a straw. The water level in the water column doesn't fluctuate as much as the water level in these glasses, so you get a little bit more of an accurate reading than what you would in a water glass, but you can't see it. I'm not sure why they didn't put a glass on a column, but then again, I didn't design it. So let's go back here and we'll see the fourth and final way. This is you remember the oh shit safety pops that I talked about, the ones that go off and they dump like 150 pounds out of the boiler? Well, this is the oh shit glass. If you see water into this one, you pretty much say oh shit and then you cut off your water. This is like a carryover glass. So you've got a throttle in the front end that's just barely higher than the water level in the boiler. And you don't want to get water into the throttle, because what that does is it creates the same situation as leaving the cylinder cocks closed. Water gets down into the cylinders and water won't compress, and if you get enough water into the cylinder, you can actually blow the head off of the piston, or blow the head off the cylinder. So if you see water starting to creep up, and I think somewhere right around here is the bad spot. If you see water creeping into it, then you need to cut your water off because you've overfilled the boiler. And that condition is called carryover. That's why I call this the carryover glass. I don't know the exact name of it, but I mean, that's what I've always called it, is carryover glass. It's got its own blowdown too. Not that you would really need to check it. You shouldn't get water up into here. There's going to be a little bit of water down in here. This thing right here, even though you can't do anything with it, I am pretty sure this is it's a wrench for the washout plugs for these guys right here. And you got one down there, one over the firebox, and should be one right there behind the sand bucket. That's if they got to snug them up, or if something happens and they need to remove it or whatnot. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Down below that, got a hot shelf here. This is the teapot, and it does not have tea in it. This is usually got steam oil for refilling the lubricators. This is a long neck oil can for oiling around in between the frame or getting hard to reach places. This plate right here, this is the indication for the top level of the firebox, or the crown sheet indicator. You notice that the bottom of the water glass is just well above this mark. Even though that is true, there's fusible plugs in the top of the crown sheet which have they stick up anywhere from 4 to 6 inches, and what they have is they're hollow plugs that have been filled with this sort of tin alloy that will melt at a lower temperature than the steel. So if you get water below the very top of those plugs, the core will melt out of them and it will let steam spray down into the firebox and will hopefully put the fire out, if not alert the crew to tell them that they have an issue that's about to become a really big problem. So that's pretty much it. It actually says right there, this line indicates highest point of crown sheet. So that's pretty much that. That's how you check the water in this thing. In addition to having at least 2 ways of verifying the water level, they also mandate that you have at least 2 ways of injecting water. The first way we've already talked about, which is the feed water pump. The second way, it's over here on the engineer side, it's called the live injector. And let me get over here into the engineer seat so we can see how this works. So right here behind the engineer seat is the water valve. So we would open that, and then you would reach over here and grab the handle, and let's see that little notch right there? That's the priming position. So you would pull this back to the priming position, and then you can adjust how much water, how fast you want to put it in there. This is wide open, and you can open it up just a little bit, or you can open it all the way up. Most of the time they wouldn't use this unless they were behind. Typically all the way on was the favorite position. This will put water in a lot faster than the feed water pump, and depending on how far up the hill I want to go with it, we're going to need to use that, because the feed water pump can't keep up at a certain point, and we're actually evaporating water faster than it can recover, so we have to run the live injector to keep ahead. And I'll just run it real quick. It sounds like a toilet flushing. That's always how we describe it to people. So here we go. Come to prime, and then that's all the way open. And I'm not going to open it very long because let me just go back here and check. I can just barely see the top of the water, so I don't want to go any higher than that. One thing I wanted to show was the blow-off cocks. Let me open these up. Got one on either side. This is the engineer's right here in the corner. It's the sludge remover, and let me do this. You can see steam coming out of the top and steam coming out to the side. And what that is, as I said in the last video, this is where the blowdown sprays out to the side, and then you've got the sludge remover up here on the top, sprays straight up. That's where these streaks come from, is it's stuff landing back on top of the boiler. That's why you've got more towards the back than you do towards the front. So yeah, periodically they would hit that and get some of the stuff out of the mud ring. Go ahead and open these windows up over here. There we go. And let's see what else we got over here on the engineer's side. We'll talk about these in a minute. Let's talk about this stuff right here. So this big box is the MU controller. So if we had a diesel behind us and we needed more power, not that we would ever need more power, this is more than ample. This is the generator field for the diesel, which you can idle up a diesel without energizing it. Of course, you can do that same thing with the reverser. So if you wanted a diesel to push you, you'd energize the generator field. You would set your reverser to forward or whichever way you're moving, and then this is the same thing as a throttle on a diesel, so you would come up notch 1 all the way as far as you need to go. Pretty self-explanatory, you know. They actually do have these in steam engines, modern ones anyway, the ones that are out on the main line. I know 765 has got ones very similar to this, and of course 844 has got one like this too. We're not going to need it, so I'm going to take it off. There we go. This is the HOT, which is not working for us today, which is fine, we don't need it. HOT stands for head of train. This is also more affectionately known as the Wilma. Now, I know what you're thinking, why in the hell is this thing called a Wilma? Well, I'll tell you. I don't know. I actually do. It's so this is the head of train. The device that's on the bottom of the train is called the EOT, which is the end of train. Imagine that. The end of train device is sometimes known as a flashing rear end device, or FRED. If you've ever seen the Flintstones cartoon, you've got Fred and Wilma. So Fred is usually shouting Wilma, and Wilma's listening. So that's kind of where it comes from. So you've got Fred on the bottom, and then you've got Wilma on... Never mind. So yeah, it's Fred and Wilma. Comes from the Flintstones. That's how the guys remember it. So, you know, they don't really call him Fred anymore. It's mainly EOT or ETD, in-train device, and then this is usually HOT. If the FRA inspector comes up and asks you, what is this device, you better say this is head of train. If you say this is Wilma, he's probably going to say, uh-huh. And your supervisor's going to be getting a call. So let's take this away. Then we've got the speedometer right down here below it. This is very similar. As a matter of fact, I think it's the same model as a speedometer that I have in a engine that I run on a regular basis. Not in the game, but in real life. It's a GP7. Same style. It's not digital, which is fine by me. One thing I didn't show you on the Wilma is the readouts. What you would do is, this is the ID code for the EOT. So each one has got its unique serial number. This one doesn't have the indicator telling you whether or not you're moving. A lot of the new, actually it might, that might be one of these over here. But anyway, in modern locomotives and modern EOTs for that matter, they have GPS in them. They can tell you whenever they're in motion. And what they do is they send a signal to the head end saying that they're moving. If you have a train that's very, very long, upwards of a mile or so, you can have anywhere from a couple hundred feet worth of slack. And what you would have to do is you have to stretch all that slack out unless you're going downhill. And back in the old days before they had this, you either had a man on the bottom telling you that you're moving, or you just had to guess. And what could happen was the engineer could underguess. He could think that he's already got his slack out and then start coming out on the throttle, and he would actually snatch the train in two. You'd break a knuckle or something would give way, you'd snatch a draft gear out, and then you have to spend a couple of hours trying to get it fixed, if it could even be fixed. So what they did was they made GPS for them, not only to tell where they were, because I don't think most railroads, I don't think any railroad owns their end-of-train device. I think they're hired out, quote unquote, from other companies as a way of keeping track of them. But yeah, they put GPS on them so that way the engineer would slowly stretch out his train, and then once he gets a signal that the EOT is moving, then he can open up, because that means the whole train's in motion. So that's the skinny on that. We can get rid of that now. And let's see, we've got a defroster, which is for this window right here. If it was snowing and we got ice or whatever on that windshield, we would open that valve and that would clear it. Let's go ahead and open that back up. Talk about the brakes here in just a second. This is the cylinder control. This is the main, so we can go ahead and open that. This is the one that controls them at the cylinder. We'll go ahead and open that. This over here, this is the reverser. Push it all the way forward, push it all the way back. That's I think this one will do 80% cutoff. And if we go out here, and if I move the reverser, this is the power reverser, as I mentioned in the other video. It actually moves. And we come over here and look at the links. This stuff actually does move. And one thing that I had been curious about is that it actually does shorten the stroke. So let me just briefly describe cutoff. So this piston right here moves the entire length of its stroke, regardless of how fast you're going, how slow you're going, what your cutoff is. This, when you're in full cutoff, it's going the entire distance. As you start coming back to center, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter until it's just barely going back and forth, back and forth. And what that does is that cuts off the amount of steam that is being introduced into the cylinders. And if you think about it, when you're at higher speeds, you don't need to completely fill them up, because if you do, you're killing your engine, because your engine is taking more energy trying to overcome the back pressure that's being accumulated in here, trying to compress that steam down, and it's not giving the steam a chance to work. So you can actually break something by doing that. You can bend, you know, this rod, or you can break something back here, and the engine will let you know in a hurry. Things will start squealing, and it'll try and lock up on you if you're running too much cutoff, which is why they came up with back pressure gauges to begin with. It was telling, it's a way of indicating how hard an engine is working and how well an engine is working. It's a way of maintaining efficiency. A lot of railroads, I know Norfolk and Western came up with sheets that they gave to their engineer describing conditions of what they were doing, like climbing up a hill, accelerating to 55 mile an hour. The throttle would be wide open. The reverser might be set 2/3 of the way down, and they would want a back pressure reading of about 16 pounds. And that was what they had to work with. So what they would do is they would adjust their reverser until they got 16 pounds, and then once they got 16 pounds, they'd leave it alone. That was optimum for them, and of course they knew because they designed the things. So that's cutoff in a nutshell. And like I said, if you think of cutoff, or if you think of the reverser in terms of transmission, and full cutoff being low gear, and then the closer you get to center, that's your kind of overdrive, where you don't need to use quite as much of the boiler in order to keep the engine in motion. And you also get a better draft that way by reducing the cutoff, so that your fireman will thank you. So back up here in the cab, we got front sander here, we've got rear sander here, and if we go back outside one more time, you see the sanding pipe. If I turn the sander on, you can see sand coming out. Cut the sander rack off. Alright, let's go ahead and do the brake. So we have the air compressor, the cross compound compressors. We'll go ahead and turn them on. You can see the steam coming up from the nozzle here. This red needle is the main reservoir. You can see it charging. It's going to cut off just over 130 pounds. There we go. This black needle on this side is the equalizing reservoir. This one over here is the brake pipe. This red one is the brake cylinder on the locomotive. One thing I'll mention right here, this is the air control for the reversing gear. They're steam powered with an air backup, so if for some reason, or I'm sorry, they're air powered with steam backup. So if for whatever reason the air system failed and we needed to use the reverser, we would open this valve and that would let steam go down to it. So that's that. Just thought I'd mention it while we're here. Now, one thing I want you to notice is that we don't have any pressure on the brake pipe. That's because I let it go too long in release. I let it go too long in application. So let me go to a release. You notice that the equalizing reservoir is going up. It's going to stop at 110. And really, this is the needle that you watch. So if you want to make an application, you watch where this needle stops, and wherever that stops, that's how much you're going to end up with. So if I want to make an application of, say, 15 pounds, I watch this needle till it gets down to right there, and then I stop, and then the train line is going to follow it. That's why they call this the equalizing reservoir. What it does is it's taking main reservoir pressure, and where it's taking air off of the main reservoir, and it's equalizing the train line to whatever it is. So this valve, this is the main supply. This is the supply for the train line. Whatever this is, the train line follows suit. And then this one is independent of all of them. Now it will apply when you're in application. And let me try and do this without rolling. Let's see. Let's go ahead and do a release. Okay, there's a release. You notice that that came down as train line pressurized. So if I knock off the independent, come back, and we're going to do a train. We're going to crap. Let's do an application on the train line. We'll say 10 pounds. Now notice that the independent brake pressure is creeping up. That's if you were going to stop the engine, the whole train as a unit. Now, if you're going downhill and you're just trying to slow the train down, it's a bad idea to let this creep up, because the engine will actually stop better than the train will. And the reason for that, if we go out here and look, is because there's a lot of brakes on this engine. We've got 4 on the engine itself, and actually, yeah, this one's just got 4. Modern diesels will have 2 per wheel. Not only that, you've got all these brakes back here on the tender. These do have 2 per wheel. And it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You got 8 axles back here that have got brakes on them. And I don't think... Yeah, the trucks have got brakes on them, all but the Pilot. The trailing truck's got brakes on it as well. So you've got a lot of braking power up here on the front end. So what you would do is you would make your application, and I'm sure that some of you have noticed it, but if you take the independent brake lever here, you push it to the side, it springs back. That's the bail position. So what you would do is you'd make an application. Your independent would creep up on you, and then you'd reach down and you'd bail, and you'd let it get down to 0. And then that's it. And that's called bailing off on the independent. This is I think this is SA8 independent brake stand. This is an 8ET. The locomotive that I worked on had a 6ET, which is a little bit smaller version of this. I think this little red handle here is the cutout for the brake stand for doing your leakage test. And let's see, anything else over here? Now the 8ET has got a couple of different positions. That's release, hold, lap, application, suppression, and then there's the big hole. That's emergency. You notice the train line's coming all the way down, and if I go into release, doesn't matter. It's going to keep coming all the way down until it gets to 0. The pressure control valve is going to reset, and then it's going to come back up and it'll give me a full release. Make sure I got the independent all the way on. And like I said, once the equalizing reservoir gets to 110, you can go ahead and set it back to lap, because the train liner is going to follow whatever this is. So once again, whatever this needle is set at, that's where the train line's going. Okay, so let's see, we got all that open. We need fuel. We need fire. So the fire's gone out. We've got the oil valve all the way open. Let's go ahead and open that up. We're going to come back on the oil regulator to about right there. We'll come up to about, you know, whatever we can get for right now, and it should come on up. Let's see, we'll open that up. I'll take a look outside here just to kind of look at the smoke. Now, a word about smoke. Black is bad, gray is good, green means too much atomizer. White smoke is too little fuel, black smoke is too much fuel, gray smoke is just right. Bluish or green color, actually blue means that the fire is out, green means that you've got too much atomizer, which green in real life is not something you would typically see. Usually you'd see way more white than you would anything else. It's just one of those things you kind of get an idea. After you've been on an engine for a little while, you know where your stuff needs to be. You need more fuel. I should start coming back up here in just a second. Let's open that, get some air in there. Look back here and see what our fuel temperature is. It's too hot. Too hot. Let's close this, and we're going to come back about halfway or so. Let's see what it's going to do. Actually, let's just go ahead and open that wide up. I do believe it is starting to come up a little bit. Anyway, so that's pretty much everything that's in the cab. We're going to kind of look around here and just kind of look at some other things that are, while we're waiting for the fuel, for the pressure to come back. This over here, this is the headlight switch. All the way forward, that's full bright. That's dim forward, off, dim on the rear, bright on the rear. We're going to go back to off for a second. This is the one for the Mars light. That's strobe forward. That's solid forward. Well, that's solid. Well, anyway, you can go forward and then solid on the rear. Anyway, we're not going to worry about that because we don't have a Mars light on this engine. We took it off. We don't really need it because it's a really the Mars light on this engine's only for emergency, and we don't need that because we're not going to have an emergency. At least we shouldn't have an emergency. I hope we don't have an emergency. If we do, it's not my fault. Let's see. Try and get this thing running. Yeah, I believe it's starting to come up, so let's give it some more fuel. So yeah, while we're here, let me go outside. We can look at the brakes real quick. I'm going to go ahead and give an application on the brakes. Let me go back here so we can see the cylinder. Or did I have an application on the brakes? Oh, that's right, I gotta... There we go. Those all come on. Same thing up here. There's our brake shoe. You see it come off, comes on. Let me go back here. We'll look at the ones on the tender, same thing. They come all the way off, and they all come on. It's really kind of cool. I haven't seen an engine that actually modeled that. We can look at the panels on the side. Let's open those. There you see the panels open up. That was control shift period, and we get those open. Then we'll do control shift apostrophe or comma. We don't need that because it's the same thing on the other side. That closes them back. We can go over here and we can do control shift comma. That opens the ones down this side. We can come up here on top. We can do Shift W. That opens the water tank ones. Well, that was quick. Alright, we're ready to go. So let me get back here real quick. That's fuel, water, Shift W, close them back. And one other thing, we didn't turn on the dynamo. Let's do that right now. There's the voltage gauge. You see it coming up. 32 volts is what we're looking for. We'll come over here on the engineer side. Hey, that's why it wasn't working. We didn't have any power. Okay, power works. So, word to the wise. And 105, got that on. Let's knock them off. There you see the pressure come back up. I'm going to make an application real quick. There's 10 pounds. You see it coming down. 3, 2, 1. That's how they check them out on the main line these days, is rather than walk down to the bottom of the train to see if it's applying, they look for the reduction on the rear, and if they get it, it passes the test. So we'll go ahead and do a reduction. Came back. You can see distance in feet. It's got a counter, and then it also has an accelerometer, which is what this is. You can do a display test that tests your display. That's a communication test with the EOT, but like I said, we're going to cut this off and we're not going to use that. I'm forgetting to do something. Oh yeah, we've got gauge lights. Lights up the important gauges: the brake gauge, the water glasses, the atomizer, which is way too high. We only need about 50 for right now. We've got cab lights, one there, one over there, and then we've got a light that's out there on the deck right there. See it cut off. And one thing I want to mention is these lights over here, these will only come on whenever the dynamo's on. So, okay, ready to go. So what we're going to do, I'm going to lean out the window like a real engineer, and we're going to give 2 blasts on the whistle. And come back in here, and we're going to put it all the way forward. Give it a little bit more fuel. Come down on the blower. Just crack it a little bit. Make sure I'm sitting where I need to be, because we're gonna take a pretty good gulp getting out of here. Something about like that. And we'll blow down the glass real quick and see that it is stopped up. Come over here and check it with the engineers. It's taking a little bit. I know we got water in there. I just wanted to see if I need to run the feed water pump. And maybe. Interesting. Anyway, we'll deal with that in a minute. Like I said, I know the engineer's glass is right, and well, we can't see that, so I'm not going to worry with it. Anyway, stick the head out the window. We've done the 2 toots. I'm going to open up the throttle, and I'm going to be watching the back pressure gauge. I'm also going to put the headlight in forward. And while I'm thinking about it, we're going to go up here to the front real quick. We're going to set our classification lights by hitting U. We're going to be running an extra. White's an extra. Red is usually end of train. If this was a pusher, sometimes they would use it for the end of a sectioned train, which is what this one is. Green needed to be displayed on any train that had been broken up. So if you had multiple sections of one train, all sections but except for the last section would have a green class light. And sometimes they would use red for that, for the very last section. That was just an indication in the days before they had dispatchers that could radio. But like I said, we're going to be an extra, so we're going to run white. And we're going to look at our back pressure gauge. This is the exhaust pressure that's coming out of the cylinders. So what we'll do is we'll just open that until we get a little bit on there. And don't know how we're moving. We got the brake on. We'll just let that start opening up, and then we'll knock off the independent and look for movement. Now what you would do with one of these locomotives is you would chase it. So you open it, and then you feather it back. And then you open it, push it back. And you just kind of gauge it until it'll go without having to slip. And we need a little bit more. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's all it takes to get it rolling. But yeah, you would fill the chest up, let it roll, and then you would kind of feather it back and forth until it got to rolling good. And what's happening is we're not putting enough steam in the cylinders to keep it rolling. We're still putting steam in it, but it's not enough to keep it accelerating. We're actually going faster than the steam that's going into it. So what I can do is, now that we're rolling pretty good, I'm going to go ahead and close the cylinder cocks. You notice that it jumps up real quick. That's because we're not bleeding it out of the sides. I'm going to open that up just a bit more. One thing to look out for is if this needle starts coming over really quickly, that means you're getting ready to slip. And this is pretty good speed coming through here. You notice it's climbing, 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 climbing. And as it starts coming up past 20, I'm going to start bringing the reversing lever back. The reason I'm bringing it back is I'm reducing some of the work on the engine. If I open up the F3, we're about 41%, and that's about right. So I can go ahead and open up the throttle some more. One thing to note, once this needle stays solid, that pretty much means that you've filled up the steam chest, so you can come on out with it. Right now it won't respond to throttle, but it will respond to reverser. Bring that up to about 100. Make sure this is open. And we need to run the water pump. So at least to right there. Let's take a look outside. Black smoke means that we're running too much fuel. So we'll cut back. to about right there. Now, you heard the safety seat. That means we came back too much. One thing we're going to have to do is sand, so I'm going to open the blower a little bit, and I'm going to hit the sand bucket. Just kind of click on it a couple times, click and hold, and then come back. If we come out here, you notice that the smoke's cleared up. This is almost what you want, kind of a dirty gray, and that's probably still a little bit too much. So a trick that you can do is open the atomizer. Let's see. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go to F4. Okay, that's not what it was. I was just making sure that we didn't have the firebox flooded. And it showed 3%, so we're just going to bump up the atomizer some more. There you see that green smoke that I was talking about. That's in the game, that's indicative of too much atomizer, but that's all right for right now. We're actually going to come down a little bit to about 120 and open up. You notice that the pressure's dropping. So one thing we can do is cut back on the feed water pump, and that'll help us a little bit. And there you see that the needle slowed down. One thing that will also help us is if the engineer would quit hogging, which is a term that's where he's running too far into the corner. And notice we're only running about 41, and we're actually slowing down. Yeah, what ended up happening is I goosed the fire. So to fix this quick and dirty, I'm going to come back on the reverser, and I'm going to watch the pressure. And it looks like it's stalled, and I'm going to open up the fire some more, and I'm going to bump the pressure up to about 125. And we're going to fire it pretty much wide open. That's the one thing about this trip, is we're going to be firing wide open. And to help the fire a little bit, we're going to bump down to about 80. It's still saying that we got too much atomizer, but it'll catch up. It's already catching up. We're going to go ahead and start running the feed water pump again. Something about like that. We'll click on the sand bucket a couple times, just to kind of help keep it clean. We're slowing down pretty good right now. There we go. Now, what the engineer can do at this point is, if he sees that his fireman's catching up to him, and we're catching up pretty good, we can start going into the corner. That's probably too much. We can come up to about 20, somewhere around in there. The steam pressure is still catching up on us, so we're just going to let it work. Here comes the pop. And we're picking up speed, so I can probably cut back on this just a bit. Not much. We can cut back on the atomizer. One thing to note on the atomizer, because we were low on steam pressure, if you get down like we were earlier, we were down like 20 pounds. You only get 20 pounds on your atomizer until the pressure comes up. So if you had 20 pounds and you had this wide open, as the boiler pressure comes up, the atomizer pressure is going to come up with it. So that's probably pretty good. Let's see what we got. That's just about perfect. So I'm going to leave it alone. And notice the water's going away. Need more fuel. Now, one thing that I typically won't do is I usually get the atomizer in one spot and I don't mess around with it too much after that. And pressure came down a little bit, and it looks like Still coming down. We're almost up to 40 mile an hour. We'll probably come back on the... Oh, we're not doing too bad. Just got to keep an eye on that pressure. I'm going to come back a little bit because we're over 50. Just kind of bring it up a little bit, help him out. And there you see the pressure stalled just that little bit. We were at 53, now we're at 46, and the pressure's starting to rebound on it. I can reach over here and give it a little bit of sand. Now the water level's getting low, and rather than run the injector, or rather than run the feed water pump the whole time, what we're going to do, if I can get it to behave, come on up. There it comes. One thing I needed to make sure is where our temperature is. Perfect. Come on up. There it comes. I'm going to go ahead and reach over here and turn on the water valve. Let it get up to pop. Let's see how fast we're going. We're right there on the verge, so I'm going to come back just a bit more. Not much. I mean, we're running pretty close to maximum right now. I'm going to cut back on the atomizer just a bit. Not much. About 110 or so. Might need to cut back a little bit more than that. Cut back a little bit under 100. And this is a situation that they have to deal with on regular, on the actual engines, is you find a break-even point where your engineer's taking as much as you can make, and that's where we are right now. And I got no choice. I'm going to have to back off. I don't want to get much below that. But there you see the steam pressure's coming back because we're not using it as fast. Damn it, it stalled again. Ah, the fire went out. There we go. It should come back now. Alright, run the injector. Yeah, we were close. We were getting close. That was almost scary. We'll go ahead and run the feed water pump too. What we'll do is we'll keep the feed water pump wide open, and we'll run the injector off the pop. We're still picking up speed, so we're doing good. Alright, I'm going to leave it alone. Leave it alone. This is what you call threading the needle. With 16 cars, doesn't sound like much, but I'm telling you, 16 cars is a big train. Most passenger trains didn't have more than about 10. If you don't believe me, look at some of the videos of the 765 and the crew talking about it, and I think they pulled an 18-car train. I think they took 18 cars over Horseshoe Curve, which is a pretty steep pass, and they were wide open. I think they went over at about 11 miles an hour, and that was with a diesel behind them. Of course, the diesel wasn't working as they were going over it, but yeah. Berkshires are powerful, but every engine's got its limit. Now, we're slowing down. I'm not going to worry about the whistles right now. We're still up around 40, so we're doing good. Injectors running. Water levels finally starting to come back. By the way, this was the other purpose the fireman had. You notice how the engineer can only see one side of a track. We're going into a right-hand curve, so the engineer can see it. If we go into a left-hand curve, the fireman is the engineer's eyes. We're slowing down a pretty good clip right now. I think we're on a 1.5. Yep, we are on a 1.5. We're just going to have to let it go. Now, one thing that is modeled correctly in this particular engine is the slower it works, the slower it runs, the harder it works. And that's what you're hearing. That's why the pressure is going to start dropping here in just a second. The engine's actually squatting down and trying to work. Black smoke. I don't dare touch that thing. We can come up on the atomizer a little bit to help that. What that's doing is that's helping keep soot out of the tubes. So we're just going to sand it real quick. And if I don't do something about the speed, we're going to start stalling. So we're still going 30 mile an hour, but I'm going to have to give it some more. Still slowing down, so we'll go some more. So the engineer's job on this hill is pretty easy. You know, you just open it up and kind of regulate your reverser. The fireman's the guy that's got to kind of work his ass off trying to keep everything under control, because as you saw, we almost run out of water there at one point. We're finally catching up. Of course, not having to do a whole lot, we're wasting an awful lot of heat. But I can tell you from personal experience, once you get behind with an engine like this on a grade like what we're going over with the train that we're pulling, once you get behind, it's hell catching back up, if you can even catch back up. So I don't mind running on the pop doing this, because we can always get it back later, because that was the hardest stretch. Right now we've pretty much got it made. I'm about to cut off the injector here in just a second. We'll let it get a little bit more water in it. And that's the other thing. We have not stopped running that injector since we turned it on. That's been a couple minutes ago. Not entirely realistic. You wouldn't want to run an injector that long, but we got to. You know, back in the old days, most of the guys would run the water low somewhere, you know, right in here, almost to the low water alarm. and that gave more space for steam to occupy the boiler, so that way they didn't have to work as hard, because you're boiling a smaller quantity of water, and you got steam quicker that way. Of course, they did it every day too, so they were used to it. It's kind of hard. You can do it. It's you got to be really careful what you're doing, though. You can run out of water in a hurry like that. Alright, that's enough. We're going to cut off the live injector. I'm going to leave the water valve. Well, no, I'm not. I'm going to go ahead and close it. Go ahead and just close the water valve. We'll run off of the feed water pump. Looking back here, I'm going to keep an eye on the water, because we're probably going to evaporate it pretty quickly. I'm not going to worry about the crossings. I'm going to kind of focus on what we're doing. Let's see, we're still spilling off some speed. So we're going to go a little bit more. Let's see where we are on the map here. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go into the siding here. We'll just go into granite loop, and see, it looks like we've got this switch right here set for us, so that's where we're going to go. Go ahead and slip that one. That should be it. We'll be there in a minute. It won't take us long. There you see the safety's coming down. Just going to let it run. About 295. I can live with that. It's nice and quiet for a change now. Smoke looks good. If anything, it's a little on the white side, but we're holding pressure, so we're doing pretty good. Actually, now that I think about it, let's look at our report. White smoke, 39 minutes. Black smoke, 9 minutes. Soot, 19 minutes. We're not doing too bad. We've had 20 blockages, no wheel slips, no wheel skids. Maximum speed was 44 miles an hour. We're not doing too bad. I've done worse. So I think we found the engine sweet spot. And we're just going to run it until we get into the siding there, which is not far from the crest of the hill, by the way. The crest is like right here. It's right around in this area, and we start going downhill. If I remember, yeah, it's somewhere in here where the tunnel is. So, anyway, Picking up a little bit of speed, it looks like. 31.6. I think we're just going to leave it alone. This is where it wants to run. We're slowing down just a bit. Should start leveling out here in just about another mile or so. We should be getting down to about 1.2. But the pressure's holding. We're not running off of the pop right now. The water's staying fairly consistent. We're still sitting about 295. So we're not on the pop. You know, and one of the things that's always bugged me about this game is that it's not bad looking. I mean, a lot of the graphics in this game, they're really, really nice, and it's just wasted on a game that, even though it calls itself a simulator, it's not. It has a bad feel to it. Now this engine, this is great. I mean, most of the people that I know that have actually run this engine, they love it. But a lot of the other engines, they just, I don't know. Maybe it's the HUD controls, or maybe it's the fact that when you're sitting in the cab, it looks like, you know, 1990 graphics. Nothing's really been fleshed out, and the textures are bad. But it just feels bad. Even some of the train handling just feels really, really kind of weird. I know there's a couple spots on this railroad where we'll go over them and the engine will just dive to one side or the other, which is unrealistic. You know, there's another simulator out there called Run 8, which I play from time to time, and I might do a video on it. Matter of fact, I might do one maybe sometime this week if I get a chance, and just kind of go through it and as a sort of a comparison. There's no steam engines in it yet. I know they're working on the GS4, which is the daylight, and just kind of show you a contrast of how trains behave here versus how trains behave there. I know one thing that's different is that the consists are vastly different. You can actually run 100 and some odd car intermodal train on Run 8. You can't do that here. It'll crash the game because the game just cannot handle it. Well, actually, I guess you could, but the game won't behave right. Let's go check the other one. There we go. Fire's still going. I'm going to go ahead and click the bucket. Let's see what we got here now. We're still doing pretty good. A little on the black side. We can fix that. Get just a little bit more atomizer. Not much. It's good. I was getting ready to say something, and I can't remember what it was because water glass got me messed up. But you know, I have a thing for steam engines. They're very, very powerful, as I'm pointing out right here. This is one engine that's pulling this heavy load. Now a diesel could do this because the diesel performs in a different way than this does. Actually, they If you had an F unit on this one, it would take 2 to pull it, and that's just nature of the beast. But what I was going to say is, about a week or so ago, I was looking through some stuff on Union Pacific Steam, and I was looking up some stuff on the UP3985, which is the Challenger. And back about 1990, what they did was they had an intermodal train. It was 134 cars, 134 loads, and they were bringing it into Cheyenne. And I can't remember the exact reason why, but they decided to put the 3985 on it. Now, to get the train to Cheyenne, it took 5 diesels. They had 4 on the front, and then they had a helper on the rear, just to kind of help even out the drawbar power, or even out the drawbar load. And I think that they were struggling trying to get it there. So they put 3985 on the train by itself and sent it over this hill that we're going over right now. And the 3985 with 139 or 134 loaded intermodal cars on a train by itself was able to pull those cars over this hill at track speed, which I think is 60 mile an hour. And there's a video of it on YouTube, so all you got to put in is like 3985 intermodal, and it should come up. And it's quite impressive to see that engine out there by itself with no helpers, no nothing, pulling that train at track speed over that grade. And the interesting thing about it is that they're meeting another train that's coming over the hill as well. Do a little bit more reverser here. Oops, fire must have went out on me. It did. There we go. Hopefully we won't stall. But yeah, like I was saying, it was meeting a train that was coming over the hill that was struggling. There we go. You know, that's another reason to run off the pop. You can take your eyes off of it, and when you hear the pop seat, then you know that you're losing pressure. And we might just stall. Nah, we're all right. I am going to do this. That pressure's creeping up, and I don't want to take a chance, because if we start slipping, it's game over. Let's go out here and look at the sand. It's kind of hard to see, and I don't want to. Well, we just did manage to save that one. She's coming right back up. That was on a, that's still on a 1.5. Doesn't matter, we needed to slow down anyway because there's our medium approach. So we can start cutting back on the fire. Probably not quite that much. Let's see. How far are we from the turnout? Not far. You can actually cut that off now. One thing I didn't point out is the Firebox flicker. You can see it better at night, but you get some flicker down here. You also get it inside the cab if you look right here, and some of it up in here. And I think some of the stuff, if I had the roof hatch down, you could probably see it more. It doesn't get up that high. Cut back on the fuel a little bit more. Let's see, what's the speed limit coming up here? Where are we at now? Almost. Got one more curve to get through. We're still going over 1.5 and we're still accelerating, so doing pretty good. We should be coming up on our turnout here very, very shortly. Actually, that's the speed board that I was looking for. 60, and then we got a 20-mile-an-hour turnout. Yep, 20-mile-an-hour turnout. So I'm going to go ahead and start easing down. And he really cuts the fire back, and then cut back on the atomizer. Cut back on the fire, almost off. And let's see. I think we're good enough where it'll actually slow down to that without having to pull the brake. About right there. Not all. I don't want it all the way off. A little bit before off. There's our approach, our diverging clear. grab some brake. 5 pounds is all we need. Now there you see that the steam chest pressure goes into negative. That means we're pulling a vacuum on the pipe. Just crack it a little bit. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. One is to keep the vacuum off of the dry pipe, and the other is you let a little bit of steam get into the dry pipe there, and or down into the cylinders, and that keeps them lubricated. And I want to pull forward just a little bit more. That's perfect. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the 4 dummies running of a steam locomotive. I hope I covered everything. And oh, that's a stop. So. And the fire goes out. Wonderful. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed. Hope I didn't bore everybody to death, but that's the run of the 844. That's kind of someone that's been around these things. That's how I used to run them. It's not perfect, and again, I'm not used to running this engine, so I'm sure that the guys that are actually on it from a daily basis or on a regular basis would say that I'm not doing it right or something like that. So hope everybody had fun, and might do some more stuff with this one, or might do some stuff with run 8. Don't know yet. So anyway, see you in the next one. Later, guys.